What's up, Bears Nation? Welcome back to Bears News Fan Report, your home for all the breaking news, in-depth analysis, and exclusive insights on our beloved Chicago Bears. I'm here to bring you something today that's been developing right under our noses, something that's going to have massive implications for this franchise moving forward. Stick with me through this entire video, because what I'm about to break down is going to change how you see this roster construction, and trust me, you don't want to miss a single detail of this analysis. You know, there's something fascinating happening with this Bears team right now. We're watching a transformation in real time, and it's not just about the wins and losses on Sunday. It's about the evolution of an identity, the emergence of new stars, and the difficult decisions that come with building a championship-caliber roster. Ben Johnson walked into Halas Hall with a vision, and every single move this organization has made since he arrived tells a story. But there's one chapter of that story that's unfolding in a way that I don't think many people saw coming. Let me take you back to last April. Draft night, the Bears are on the clock with the 10th overall pick. There's electricity in the air, possibilities swirling around about which direction the franchise might go. And then the pick comes in. The Bears select Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. Now, I remember the immediate reaction from the fan base was mixed. Some people were thrilled about getting an elite receiving threat at the position. Others were scratching their heads, wondering why we'd invest such a premium pick at tight end when we already had a guy making serious money at that exact same position. That guy, of course, is Cole Kmet. And almost immediately after Loveland's name was called, the speculation started. Trade rumors, whispers about whether Kmet's days in Chicago were numbered. Social media went crazy with mock trades, with people trying to figure out what his value might be on the open market. But here's where it got interesting, and here's where a lot of people missed the bigger picture. Those of us who had been studying Ben Johnson's offensive philosophy from his time in Detroit knew something that the casual observer didn't. Johnson loves using two tight end sets. I mean, he absolutely loves it. This wasn't necessarily an either-or situation. So heading into this season, the expectation was that both Kmet and Loveland would have significant roles in this offense. Kmet would be the established veteran, the security blanket, the guy who knows the system. Loveland would be the dynamic rookie, learning on the fly, getting his opportunities, while developing into what the organization hoped would be a cornerstone piece. It made sense on paper, two talented tight ends working in tandem, creating matchup nightmares for opposing defenses. That was the plan at least, but as we all know, plans in the NFL have a funny way of evolving once the bullets start flying for real. The season kicked off, and both guys were getting their touches, both were contributing. Then week 3 happened. Loveland was starting to really get comfortable. Johnson had just talked about expanding his role in the offense, and then boom, hip injury. Early in that game against the Chargers, Loveland went down, and suddenly we were back to wondering what this tight end rotation would really look like. Week 4 against the Raiders, Loveland was out. This was Cole Kmet's moment. This was his chance to remind everyone why the Bears had invested so heavily in him, why he was supposed to be that foundational piece at the position. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this, Bears fans. He didn't seize that moment. The production just wasn't there. The impact plays weren't happening. It was one of those performances where you walk away thinking, okay, maybe there's more to this situation than we realized. The Bears went into their Week 5 bye, and you could feel the narrative starting to shift. When they came out of that bye week, something had changed. The coaching staff had clearly made some decisions about how they wanted to deploy these two players, and those decisions were about to reshape the entire dynamic at the tight end position for this franchise. Week 7 against the Saints. That's when it happened. For the first time all season, Colston Loveland played more snaps than Cole Kmet. It wasn't a huge difference, but it was noticeable. It was significant. It was a statement. Then Week 8 came around. Kmet missed that game, and Loveland got his first real opportunity to be the undisputed #1 guy. And he absolutely balled out. But it was Week 9 against Cincinnati that really opened everyone's eyes. Loveland put together a performance that had people across the league taking notice. The catches, the yards after contact, the route running, the football IQ. It was all there on display, and here's where the numbers start to tell a really compelling story. Since Week 7, since that game against the Saints when Loveland started playing 65% or more of the offensive snaps, let me give you some statistics that are going to blow your mind. Loveland is averaging 14.1 yards per reception. His yards per route run is 2.66. His Pro Football Focus grade is 72.1. He scored 3 touchdowns. These aren't just good numbers for a rookie. These are elite numbers for any tight end in the NFL. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, what about Tyler Warren? There were plenty of people before the draft who said Warren was actually the better tight end in that class. Fair question. Since Week 7, Warren's averaging 11.2 yards per reception, 2.13 yards per route run, has a PFF grade of 67.7, and has 1 touchdown. I'm not here to trash Tyler Warren. He's a good player. But the Bears absolutely made the right call with Loveland, and the production backs that up. But let's get back to Cole Kmet, because this is where the story gets really interesting, and this is where we have to start having some difficult conversations as a fan base. Over the last 6 games, Kmet has had more than 1 catch and more than 2 targets exactly 1 time? 1 time in 6 games. 6. Meanwhile, Loveland hasn't had fewer than 4 targets or 3 catches in any of his last 6 games. The role reversal is complete. The changing of the guard has happened. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, well, isn't Kmet's presence still limiting Loveland's production? Isn't he taking snaps away from our emerging star? And that's a fair question, but here's the reality. The Bears are using 12 personnel. That's 1 running back and 2 tight ends at the 9th highest rate in the entire league. Over 30% of their offensive snaps feature 2 tight ends on the field. Over the last 3 games, Loveland has played 140 offensive snaps. Kmet has played 145. They're both out there plenty. The difference isn't in the snaps. It's in the roles, and this is where Ben Johnson's Detroit influence becomes crystal clear. When Johnson was coordinating that Lions offense, he had Sam Laporta as his dynamic receiving tight end and Brock Wright as his blocking specialist who could occasionally contribute in the passing game. That's exactly what's happening here in Chicago. Loveland has become our Laporta, and Kmet, to his credit, has actually become a really good version of that right role. His PFF grades as both a run blocker and pass blocker are in the top 20 among all tight ends this season. He's doing his job. It's just not the job he was paid to do. And that's where we get to the heart of this situation, Bears fans. Cole Kmet is currently one of the 10 highest paid tight ends in the entire NFL. He's making serious money, the kind of money that comes with expectations, the kind of money that's supposed to buy you a legitimate receiving threat, a guy who's going to be a significant part of your passing attack. But that's not what his role is anymore. Through no real fault of his own, the emergence of Colston Loveland has fundamentally changed what Cole Kmet's value is to this football team. After this season, Kmet has 2 years remaining on his 4-year, $50 million contract. Let that sink in for a second. $50 million. And right now, his primary role is as a blocking tight end who occasionally runs a route. Now, don't get me wrong, blocking is important. It's crucial to what this offense wants to do. But you don't pay top 10 tight end money for a guy whose main contribution is in the run game. So here's where the front office is going to have to make a really difficult decision this offseason. If they trade Kmet before June 1st, they would clear $8.4 million off the books for the 2026 season. His cap hit next year is $11.6 million, so they'd still have $3.2 million in dead money. But that's a significant amount of cap space that could be used elsewhere. And here's the thing, Bears Nation, that money could be used to address other needs on this roster. We all know there are positions where we could use upgrades. That's real money that could make a real difference. But this isn't just about the financial aspect. This is also about what's best for Cole Kmet as a player and as a person. He's been a professional through all of this. He hasn't complained publicly. He's done everything the coaches have asked him to do. But at the end of the day, he's a competitive athlete who probably wants to be more involved in the passing game. Trading him to a team where he could be the #1 tight end, where he could be that primary receiving threat, might actually be the best thing for his career. He could go somewhere and thrive in a featured role, and we could use that cap space to continue building this roster around Caleb Williams and our young core. This is the reality that the Chicago Bears are going to have to face this offseason. The speculation that started last April, right after we drafted Loveland, is about to become very real. And honestly, as difficult as it might be to trade a player we've invested so heavily in, both financially and emotionally, it's probably the right move for everyone involved. Colston Loveland has proven he's ready to be the guy. He's shown the talent, the consistency, the ability to be a matchup problem for defenses. He's everything we hoped he would be when we used that 10th overall pick on him. And if we're being honest with ourselves, paying $11.6 million for a backup tight end, even a really good blocking backup tight end, just doesn't make sense when you're trying to build a championship roster. The Bears have some tough decisions to make this offseason. This Cole Kmet situation is just one of them, but it's an important one. It's the kind of decision that separates good organizations from great ones. Being able to recognize when a player's role has changed, when the value doesn't match the investment anymore, and having the courage to make the difficult but necessary move. That's what championship organizations do. So here's my take, Bears Nation. I think Cole Kmet gets traded this offseason. I think the front office looks at that $8.4 million in cap savings, looks at Colston Loveland's emergence, and makes the move. And I think it's going to be the right decision for this franchise. Kmet will get a chance to be a featured player somewhere else. We'll free up significant cap space, and Loveland will firmly establish himself as our tight end of the future. But I want to hear from you. If you enjoyed this breakdown, if you appreciate the in-depth analysis and the insider perspective, make sure you smash that like button. Subscribe to Bears News Fan Report if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. We're bringing you the latest news, the deepest analysis, and everything you need to stay on top of what's happening with our Chicago Bears. Thanks for watching, Bears Nation. Until next time, bear down.